right? It doesn't have to be anything like particularly weird. Exactly. That's all we want. Just conceptually kind of working with the idea of that lateral movement, that circle.
Do you have any particulars on hand positioning?
Yeah, so we can work on that a little bit too. So like, I think having your hands somewhere you can use them, that's kind of, obviously a good idea. But I'm also not a super big proponent of like, because we worked on this when, when we did, class and used them up and stuff like that. Is like, I don't like the because one, it either looks really submissive, which might draw out a person who is kind of interested, or it looks really combative, right? Because the difference between that, versus that, like, so I'm kind of like one of those, like, I like to have my hands, kind of where I can, like, play with them or whatever, or kind of do something like this, right? Same thing, so I can have my hands, like, in play really quickly, right? And I kind of, for me personally, I feel looser when I kind of just have my hands like up, like this feels really stiff, like this feels really stiff. But I'm kind of, if I'm just kind of like, flow and have my hands right here, that feels like good to me. And that might be a personal, personal thing. There's room for, for some variation on that for sure. Cool.
Just like when you're on your feet for, your strike matches. Exact same thing.
Cool. And try to also get in a little bit of the habit of like, just take a quick peek at where you're going to, right? Because like, because like going left, going right, but also it doesn't really take much out. So I'm working like Donahoe here, yeah. So like Donahoe's kind of with me, like it doesn't really take anything for me to move. Like I can real quick pick spot. Like that's, you're not like losing sight of the attack or anything like that. It's just take a quick peek. Especially like if we took a bunch of those chairs and put them out in the middle here and said, hey, don't let yourself trip over a chair.
Then don't let yourself get cornered.
Exactly, that, and try to work yourself both left and right. Like, don't be a person who only circles left or only circles right. Like, from a combative sports sense, that is a really bad habit to be in.
Really have a little bit of coffee.
These two are immediately like 27% faster. Like, slow down a little bit, Turbo.
Sherry.
Again, like this is, we're not supposed to work like, hey, this, like this, I like to do this just conceptually, because I think too often, like classes like this, so much focus is on the actual intended part, and kind of for good reason, that like, we lose a lot of sometimes we lose a lot of the focus, which is like, hey, if I can just do simple shit like stay, like that's perfectly acceptable, but like, we still kind of have to work it a little bit, How's it going over there, you two? Good? Like sure.
Ladies, it's been 2 years. We just figured out early. Like 2 and 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's bring it back in here, guys. Does that just conceptually, does that make sense, right? That's not super complex as far as a concept goes, but like doing it in person it's actually more difficult. This is one thing like, you see a lot in fighting, if you guys watch professional mixed martial arts or, high-level wrestling or whatever, it's like everybody looks good, like dancing around or whatever, and the first time I get punched or the first time we kind of get engaged in that firefight, what happens? Both people's feet get stapled to the ground, right? And maybe they still retain some body movement, some head movement, and they just sit there and throw or whatever it is, so like the best guys are the guys who stay fleet of foot, like when they're in the kitchen there, So kind of expand on that. So again, that's stuff that we can kind of do at distance. As the distance closes down, the sense of urgency has to go up with that. So, so when it comes to lateral movement, when we're in tight confines, it's kind of going to become more like a step and a pivot. And see, if I kind of make space that way. And in like boxing, this would be like how you would throw like your check hook or something like that, right? So we're dealing with Jared again, right? So Jared advances in, right? So what I would do here is whatever my lead foot is, I'm going to step outside of his lead foot. So when I step, pivot, right? So like in boxing, this is one of the ways that boxers deal with someone who's like really heavy forward pressure, right? So as he comes in and step out, bam, right? We throw that hook, right? So we call that the check hook. So, so as I step out and I pivot, right? So I still like adjust. He's going to adjust back to me, right? But maybe now, maybe I have to do this several times. So like I'm like, check, like pivot, move, right? The other component I'm going to add to that, we're going to start to, now we're going to be in a distance, we're going to have to hand fight. Okay, so when it comes to hand fighting, the basic idea is that I want my hands on top and or inside of my opponent's hands. And so common sense kind of applies here. So if he's got his hands way up here or whatever, I don't want to be on top of him. So you kind of make like a sort of a box around your, your nipples to knees kind of area, which is, so like, I'm dealing with Jared here. So he's here and here. So this is on top, right? This is inside. It's kind of on top and inside. Same thing. So if he's grabbing out here, this is inside, right? If he's coming from like on top, I don't know if there's like an overhead blow or something like that, right? So this is inside. So the basic idea is, one, I want to avoid the entanglement by not allowing him to establish his grips first of all, right? So as he's trying to come in and establish grips or throws his like, his kind of his rangefinder punch or something like that. So as I get rid of the hands, right? It becomes easier to step outside. Again, big thing you're gonna see with that is you've gotta move the feet, right? So the best fighters, the best wrestlers are guys who move their hands, they move their feet. Very comparable with like football, especially linemen, right? Like the best linemen are guys who are using their hands and moving their feet. Like guys who one or the other doesn't work very well, they don't work in tandem, are guys who get run over, get run around. So, very simple standpoint, so so Jared's just gonna reach out, like he's just trying to make contact with me, right? So when he tries to make contact, I'm going to get rid of the hand, right? So I get rid of the hand, I can step outside, I can quicker movement, right? Again, go to both sides, right? And sometimes it's as simple as like, he's just reaching out, I just slap, right? Totally different story. Something as simple as staying on top, right? So that's one of the reasons why, boxers, kickboxers stay in here. Even if they have like a longer guard, stay in here. Same thing with wrestlers, right? So we tend to stay in here, right? And we keep this checking hand, right? So I don't want him making contact unmolested, right? So when he makes contact, I'm just gonna get rid of the hand. I'm gonna continue to circle out, okay? Is everybody good on that? Right. So let's partner up again. Same thing. So I want one guy. So if I'll be the bad guy against Jared. So I'm just gonna kind of make exactly like just kind of lazy contact, right? Good. Perfect. So that's all he's gonna do. He's just gonna stay on top, stay inside. He's gonna work on circling there. Okay. So let's break up into our two groups again. We'll kind of just work that. Yep. Good, and then so same thing, Ernie. So when you're fighting the hands, also want you to try to mix in the like checking the ground and see where you're at, right? So you're good. So you're checking the hands, and moving, right? So there's nothing that says I can't do that. Oh shit, right? Like check behind me, like just simple things, right? It's not like it doesn't have to be like, oh, I gotta turn around every time. Like just move your eyes to the floor real quick. That way, like, hey, I get here, oh, I want to squeeze in between those two aisles in the grocery store, something like that. So get in the habit of like not only eyes on opponent and stuff like that, but there's nothing that says you can't just move your eyes real quick, see where you're going as well. Jump in with that again. Yeah, try to stay more on top, right? So it's like, so not only like just the like general like checking, but there's a specific reason why we want to be on top. So one, from like a strictly wrestling standpoint, like this is your basic entry into most of your stuff, right? Because anytime like, so we're locked up here, or we get to this, right? So you get on top of the hand, right? Boom. So that's, I mean, your basic wrestling, like entries 101. But it's also now from a combative, or fight standpoint. So like, even if we're locked up here, he's got his hands relatively high or whatever, right? So like you get those down, that's how guys punch over. Same thing, right? So I throw the jab at him, so what's he do? He knocks it down, he comes over the top. Or he can knock down, come, same, exactly, right? So it's like super simple concept versus like just strictly like parrying, right? So that's, you can do that. If I can get rid of it, like it gives you more stuff. So if you want to speed it up a little bit too, it seems like super twitchy, but small down right now, it's fine. Make sure we switch up. I try to go both directions. Right, circle out to the left, circle out to the right. Good guys, go ahead, relax a little bit.
Really making a big movement.
You get some reps here.
That opens your eyes.
So now, I want you to move your feet and try to use the top of the back. Right? Yes, good. Yep. Try to see if you can relax a little bit. Like I can feel you like it's a powerful swat, but you're like so like clenched that it's really slow. So it's just something, just that. Right now. Hey, yeah. See how quick that can be? And all you have to do is just get it and now move your feet. Be somewhere else after. Yes, good. Good. Move your feet, get you down. Yeah, there, yes, yeah, much better, yeah. Keep moving, good. Yeah, keep moving those feet, right? Good swats. And yes, that right there, that's much better, yeah. Good. Wrap your claws on you there. All right, go ahead and bring it back in here, guys. You guys both get reps, good?
I don't know that I'm good, but.
Okay, does anybody have any like major questions over that, or anything like you've noticed, or like, you know, things that you need to bring up, like just from, I mean, conceptually it's basic, right? But I guess, so if I'll work with Donahoe here. So kind of brought this up, working with Sherry. So obviously Donahoe and I have trained together for a long time. So we have a lot of, you know, interactions with this. But so some of the main reasons why staying on top is so important in any sort of combative sense. So one, you know, if a person is trying to just grab things like that, really common, any sort of, you know, street encounter, whatever you want to call it. So a couple of reasons that guys do that. It's like one, it's kind of a dominance move, right? So like this right here, back the guy up, it's a dominance thing. The other thing the guy's doing, what is he doing when he makes contact with your hand here? What's a couple things that are happening that I could use this hand for? Yes, Tim?
Hosted.
I mean, I could push him, I could pull him, right? But what, so if you had to break that down more, conceptually, what does that help me maintain?
Distance.
A relative distance, right? Why would I want to do that if I'm me attacking?
If you're attacking, so he can't counter on you.
Partially, certainly. What else, like why do guys in boxing reach out with the jab?
They're just trying
So
to
measure
they're trying to measure their distance so you can also.
Yes, they're measuring the distance and or maintaining it, right? So I know at this distance, this punch is going to have a lot of power and it's going to make contact with something, right? Like if this hand can touch, this hand can touch, right? So if he tries to just back out, right, and get away, I can still make contact with that hand. Conversely, like if I get here and he tries to come into me, I can maintain that, right? So that's one of the main reasons why people make contact with that. And then from a control standpoint, maybe I just want to use it to push him up against the wall, up against the car, whatever it is. So that's one of the reasons why we get rid of it. And then when we talk about like in a combat sports or like a self-defense sense, we're kind of working here is like, so obviously, so we said guys throw out the jab. So one is to measure their distance. Two is to either try to get him to take the bait on a bad fake, or guys will just reach out and they'll just swap that hand down so they can throw that punch, right? So another thing that they do, very simple, so Donahoe just keeps his nice little tight guard in. You see this in boxing all the time, it's real slick. His guys just hit it down, and what do they do? Come right over the top, bam, bam, right? So go here, what's he now? Counter offer, right? Bam, right? He can even go same hands, so go bam, bam, right? Something as simple as that. So we stay in there. From a wrestling standpoint, right? Guys like to grab the head. Why do they like to grab the head? What's the biggest advantage you get from that?
And manipulate the rest of the body.
Yeah, so you pull on the head, you can change the posture of the whole body, wear out the lower back, right? Bring the guy's head down. In wrestling, you know, maybe for snap down, you know, takedown, we start to add knees or things into the fighting mix, right? So guys reach up for the head, right? So guys reach up for the head. So when I'm reaching, Donahoe's not going to allow that. So as I reach, he stays inside, he stays on top, right? Bam, right? And that's also how he quickly counters off of that stuff. So some things, as we start to become more entangled and work that side of things, so that's really big. And then now when we're talking about the inside position, right? So what is inside? So if Donahoe is going to reach for my body, and he's the bad person here, because he's always the bad person in here, is what is inside of my body that I might want to maintain access to and or deny access to him?
Fire.
Right, so my freaking heater, right? His heater, maybe he's got a weapon, right? Something like that. So as Donahoe's reaching inside with his hands to the weapon, right? So obviously I don't want that to happen, so I stay inside, right? So same thing, maybe we're even more locked up right here. So he's still working, right? So he's still working inside, right? So he's reaching with this hand, right? So I'm still maintaining inside position. I'm still inside. Like all of those are inside, right? I'm still on top, I'm still on top, I'm still on top, like all of those things, okay? So one, because I want to maintain my access to my belt line if I have a weapon or something, or I don't want him to have access to it, right? So maybe now I've got the underhook here and I see him start to, so now I'm like, oh shit, I want to stay inside because he's reaching to his, right? So just kind of simple, like conceptually, as far as that goes. Does that make sense, guys? Does anybody have any major?
With kind of everything
Yes.
so far, would you start out slow and go faster and faster as you get more comfortable, or you just start going at medium to full speed and figure it out?
I mean, starting slow is always good, and I like slow just because, like, one thing that tends to happen in this kind of drilling is it's incredibly difficult when you have this much space for a guy who's attacking me to actually gain the ground to get me, right? Because reality, like if Donahoe was just like, hey, I'm gonna grab you, right? All right, cool, good luck, right? So in some ways, slowing the speed down, also, I mean, work on the technical components, but also just to enforce the actual type of drill that we're trying to work, right? Like if we just said, hey, in every single drill, you're allowed to just escape, everybody in here would just never let the guy touch me, they would just run out the
Yeah, just run away.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, so you have to maintain some of that. So we say, hey, we're kind of going like, I'm purposely letting him in closer than, like, if I saw, especially someone Donahoe's side, if I saw like somebody like this, like walking at me in the bank, I'd be like, what's this guy's problem? Right, I'm gonna go over here, you know? But it's like, so obviously I'm going to let him in closer than I would like to, just to enforce like the drilling, right? So he gets in closer. Now, this is a difficult distance to maintain and without getting entangled. So if I can do it at this distance, I can probably do it at that distance. So yeah, just from a drilling concept, absolutely. Okay, so